We are reading Han Feizi. Let's read section 17, Precautions for a King Within His Palace. It is hazardous for the ruler of men to trust others, for he who trusts others will be controlled by others. Ministers have no bonds of flesh and blood which tie them to their ruler. It is only the force of circumstance which compels them to serve him. Hence, those who act as ministers never for a moment cease trying to spy into their sovereign's mind. And yet the ruler of men sits above them in indolence and pride. That is why there are rulers in the world who face intimidation and sovereigns who are murdered. If the ruler puts too much trust in his son, then evil ministers will find ways to utilize the son for the accomplishment of their private schemes. Thus, Li Tui, acting as aide to the king of Chao, starved the father of the ruler to death. If the ruler puts too much trust in his consort, then evil ministers will find ways to utilize the consort for the accomplishment of their private schemes. Thus, the actor Shu aided Lady Li to bring about the death of Shan Shang and to set Qin Shi on the throne. Now, if someone as close to the ruler as his own consort and as dear to him as his own son still cannot be trusted, then obviously no one else is to be trusted either. Moreover, whether one is ruler of a state of 10,000 chariots or of 1,000 only, it is quite likely that his consort, his concubines, or the son he has designated as heir to his throne will wish for his early death. How do I know this is so? A wife is not bound to be her husband by any ties of blood. If he loves her, she remains close to him. If not, she becomes estranged. The saying goes, if the mother is favored, the son will be embraced. But if this is so, then the opposite must be. If the mother is despised, the son will be cast away. A man at 50 has not yet lost interest in sex, and yet at 30, a woman's beauty has already faded. If a woman whose beauty has already faded waits upon a man still occupied by thoughts of sex, then she will be spurned and disfavored. And her son will stand little chance of succeeding to the throne. This is why consorts and concubines long for the early death of the ruler. If the consort can become Queen Dowager and her son ascend the throne, then any law she issues will be carried out. Any prohibition she decrees will be heeded. She may enjoy the delights of sex as often as she ever did while her late lord was alive, and may rule a state of 10,000 chariots in any way she pleases, without fear of suspicion. This is why we have secret poisonings, stranglings, and knifings. As the spring and autumn annals of Tao Zuo says, less than half of all rulers die from illness. If the ruler does not understand this, then he lays himself open to revolt on all sides. Thus it is said, when those who stand to profit by the ruler's death are many, he is in peril. The charioteer Wang Liang was good to his horses, and Qian, the king of Yue, was good to his men, the one so that they would run for him, the other so that they would fight for him. A physician will often suck man's wound clean and hold the bad blood in his mouth, not because he is bound to them by any tie of kinship, but because he knows there is profit in it. The carriage maker making carriages hopes that men will grow rich and eminent. The carpenter fashioning coffins hopes that men will die prematurely. It is not that the carriage maker is kind hearted and the carpenter a knave. It is only that if men do not become rich and eminent, the carriages will never sell. And if men do not die, there will be no market for coffins. The carpenter has no feeling of hatred towards others, he merely stands to profit by their death. In the same way, when consorts, concubines, and heir apparents have organized their cliques, they long for the ruler's death, for unless he dies, their possession will never be really strong. They have no feeling of hatred towards the ruler, they merely stand to profit by his death. The ruler, therefore, must not fail to keep close watch on those who might profit by his death. Though the sun and moon are surrounded by halos, the real danger to them comes from within. Prepare as you may against those who hate you, calamity will come to you from those who love or whom you love. Therefore, the enlightened ruler does not rush into any undertaking that he has not properly studied beforehand, nor does he eat any unusual foods. He listens to reports from afar and scrutinizes the men close to him in order to ascertain the faults for those within and without the palace. He examines the agreements and disagreements in debate in order to determine how the various factions in the government shape up. He compares proposals and results to make certain that words are backed up by facts. He demands that what comes after shall match what went before. Governs the masses according to the law and carefully checks on the various motives of all. If he can make certain that men do not receive any unearned rewards, not overstep their authority, that death penalties are justly handed out, and no crime goes unpunished, then evil and malicious men will find no opening to carry out their private schemes. If too much compulsory labor service is demanded of the people, they feel afflicted, and this will give rise to local power groups. When local power groups have arisen, they will begin exercising the right to exempt the people from labor service, and once they are able to do this, their leaders will grow rich on bribes. To afflict the people and thereby enrich men of influence, to create power groups and thereby relinquish your authority to your ministers, are not the way to bring long-lasting benefit to the world. Hence it is said, if labor services are few, the people will be content. If the people are content, there will be no opportunity for men to exercise undue authority on the lower levels, and power groups will disappear. Once power groups have been wiped out, then all right to dispense favors will reside with the sovereign. It is obvious that under normal circumstances, water will overcome fire, but if a kettle comes between them, the water will bubble and boil itself completely dry on top. While the fire goes on burning merrily away underneath, the water having been deprived of the means by which it customarily overcomes fire. It is just as obvious that government should be able to put an end to evil in the same way as water overcomes fire. But if the officials whose duty it is to uphold the law instead play the part of the kettle, then the laws will be clear only in the mind of the ruler alone. And he will have been deprived of the means by which to prohibit evil. Judging from the tales handed down from high antiquity and the incidents recording in the spring and autumn annals, those men who violated the laws, committed treason, and carried out major acts of evil always worked through some eminent and highly placed ministers. And yet the laws and regulations are customarily designed to prevent evil among the humble and lowly people. And it is upon them alone that penalties and punishments fall. Hence, the common people lose hope and are left with no place to air their grievance. Meanwhile, the high ministers band together and work as one man to cloud the vision of the ruler. In order to demonstrate that they have no private schemes, they pretend on the outside to be at odds with one another. Though in secret they are friendly enough, acting as ears and eyes for each other to spy out flaws in the ruler's defense. The ruler, his vision thus clouded and obstructed, has no path by which to obtain true information. Though he retains the name of sovereign, he has lost the reality. And his ministers are free to enforce the law as they please. This is what happened to the son of heaven of the Zhou Dynasty. If the ruler lends even a little of his power to others, then superior and inferior will change places. Hence it is said that no ministers should be allowed to borrow the power and authority of the ruler.